my lovelies. My name is Lecka. Today we're going to be playing Forgotten Not Lost, a kinetic visual novel, which I'm not really sure what a kinetic visual novel means, but I'm very excited to find out. So if you guys have not already, go ahead and lick that like button and subscribe because it is delicious and very free to do so, and it helps out the channel significantly. But before anything else, let's just go ahead and start and get on into it. Wake up! Wake up, you old fool! I open my eyes solely at the insistent urging, grunting in protest. Is it another day already? I should get up and feed Maybell then. With a great deal of effort, I push myself into a sitting position. However, when I finally open my eyes, I almost fall back in surprise at the unfamiliar face peering back at me. Who is this person?
Quickly, come and have your breakfast.
I sit there for a moment, staring at her in silence. It seems rude to ask her who she is and what she's doing here, but considering she's the stranger who's randomly showing up at my house, I suppose I do have the right to ask. I clear my throat, working up the courage to voice the pressing question. My voice croaks, still thick from sleep. Sorry, who are you? The old lady freezes as though caught off guard by my words. There's a beat of silence as she just looks at me intently, making a cough in discomfort. Why is she staring at me like that? Do I know her? Finally, she smiles softly.
It's me, your wife, remember?
Madeline. Madeline is our wife. Suddenly it hits me like a ton of bricks. She's my wife, Madeline, who I've been married to for 40 years. How could I possibly forget? Of course! I don't know what got into me for a second there. I apologize. I stand up, walking over to the dining table and sit down. A content smile spreads across my face at the sight of eggs and bacon on the plate before me. Looks like the hens laid their eggs without problem today. Where is Maribel again? The question spills out of my mouth naturally without thinking, but a strange feeling instantly strikes me. Something feels off. Is something wrong with our beloved daughter, Maribel? Madeline sighs and sits down in the seat opposite of mine. She pats my head and smiles indulgently.
Dear, Maribel is gone. She passed away in the plague 30 years ago.
Madeline's words ring a bell in my mind, but the memory keeps slipping away every time I try to grasp it. I shake my head in confusion. My memory has been getting worse and worse these days. According to Madeline, if this is even correct in the first place, my memory is failing me to the extent where I sometimes am unable to recall what I've had for breakfast just moments after I finish eating.
Remember to use your knife when you're eating, dear.
Madeline places the knife in my other hand and smiles encouragingly. I try to move both hands together at the same time, but for some reason one hand is exasperatingly less responsive than the other one is. I let out a frustrated sigh when my knife falls to the table with a clatter after my fifth failed attempt. Madeline sighs softly before moving to sit beside me. She briefly squeezes my hand in a comforting gesture as she reaches for the fork and takes the knife from me. Carefully, she cuts the food up into little pieces.
You big baby, say ah!
My sheepish smile turns into a more genuine, happy smile. This reminds me of our first date decades ago. I open my mouth as she feeds me a small slice of bacon. I chew on it slowly, savoring the taste. This really reminds me of when we went to the high tower for our date. Madeline seems surprised, her eyes widening a little.
You can remember that?
I give an enthusiastic nod as she feeds me a small slice of pork sausage. I was meeting your parents officially as your suitor for the first time, and there was a small boat nearby. We stole it and sailed out to sea. I can still remember all the apples you brought along in your basket. They were delicious. We fed each other apples while watching the waves in the middle of the ocean.
We did. You were right.
There is something different about Madeline's smile as she speaks. It's even wider and happier than before. I wonder why. Isn't it common for couples to talk about their shared days from the past? Not when you very clearly have Alzheimer's or some kind of issue with your memory here, sir. As she continues feeding me, I swallow obediently. I am well aware of the fact that I am, to an extent, a burden on her. The least I can do is help relieve her stress by being compliant. When the last of my food is gone, she dabs at my mouth with a cloth and moves back over to her own seat to start her own meal. And as I watch Madeline nibble at her food, I can't push away the feeling that I'm forgetting something I need to do. What is it? I frown in concentration. Suddenly, an earlier thought pops back into my mind. Ah, Maybell! I still need to feed her this morning. I immediately get up from my chair and walk to the backyard, hurrying in case this thread of thoughts, leaves me once again before I complete the task. To my surprise, the spot where Maybell usually stands is empty. I look around, wondering if Maybell is hiding somewhere, but I see no sight of her. I shout loudly to Madeline. Madeline, where's Maybell? Maybell is our cow. I got her from Mayor Orland as a birthday gift years ago. Since then, she has brought in countless coins with her good milk and has quickly become one of our most prized possessions.
Silly old fool. Maybell died last year.
I scratch my head, baffled. Is that true? Since Madeline says so, I suppose it is true. I return to the house, giving Madeline a quick kiss on the cheek when I walk by. Stopping in front of the fireplace, I plop down on my armchair with a sigh. The fire crackles, and I watch the familiar flames for a while before getting distracted by the basket of old trinkets next to me. Feeling curious, I decide to examine them. I pick up one peculiar-looking item and stare at it for a long while. I then try to take it apart, but I fail. Perplexed, I set it back down on the basket. It's irking me how it seems so familiar to me, yet I can't recall exactly what it is.
Dear, I'm going to the market. Do me a favor and stay where you are, okay?
Don't worry, I wasn't planning on going anywhere. I smile and bid her farewell. A loud click of the padlock ensues, signaling that Madeline has left. With nothing left to do, I pick the trinket up again and continue to toy with it. Is it a piece of iron? A toy? I can't quite tell. I'm startled out of my daze when the thunder rumbles. Thunder? Is a storm brewing? I look out the window to check, and I frown in surprise at the dark, cloudy skies. It seems just like a moment ago the sky was clear and blue. I wonder how much time has already passed. A sudden blinding flash of lightning causes me to flinch, squeezing my eyes shut reflexively. It looks like there really will be a storm, perhaps even a bad one. In that case, Maybelle needs to be brought into the barn. I'm already at the front door with a surprisingly clear thought flashes across my mind. Right, Madeline said that Maybelle is dead. With my concerns taken care of, I return to what I was doing previously. I'm determined to figure out what this item is. I'm not quite sure, but somehow I have a feeling that I will solve this mystery soon enough. After a while, my interest in the trinket fades, and I set it down on the end table. Strangely enough, it seems to be on the verge of falling over no matter how I adjust the angle, and I spend some time attempting to keep it upright before giving up. The fire has gone out by now, and silence echoes in the room. Is Madeline still not back yet? It's almost dinner time. It's unlikely to take so long on a simple trip to the market. I look out at the downpour outside. A worried sigh escapes my mouth. Maybe I should go and find her. I try to open the door, but it seems that Madeline has locked me in. Old fool! Does she take me for someone who will be silly enough to wander out of the house and get lost? What should I do then? I can't go anywhere until Madeline comes home. Feeling the beginnings of pangs of hunger, I walk over to the kitchen in search of some food to ease the hunger. A note near the iron cast pot. That was a weird sentence for me to say for some reason. A note near the iron cast pot catches my attention. The water in this pot is hot. You can use it to drink your favorite tea. The tea tin is in the drawer second from the bottom. Love, Madeline. How considerate! Now I can enjoy tea while waiting for Madeline. I smile and take out the tea from the drawer before making my own cup. I lean back in my armchair sipping on the tea. The smell of the rain gradually seeps into the house, and even the warmth of the tea fails to ward off the cold. I stare at the unlit fireplace shivering. Maybe I should relight it after all. Where are my matches? All right, I always keep the matches in my dresser just in case I need to light an oil lamp when I wake up at night to get something. Digging in the drawers, I take out a match and strike it before throwing it into the fireplace. Fire crackles to life, and I stoke it with the fire poker until it's a warm, comforting flame. Satisfied, I go back to my comfortable sitting position, but for the life of me, I cannot remember what I was doing just before lighting the fire. I rub my temples tiredly, annoyed at myself. For some reason, as of late, I keep forgetting my actions the second I turn my head. Ironically, I can recall things in the past in vivid detail, a great deal of my past, in fact. Though, on the bright side, I suppose at my age, there's no point in thinking about recent things anyway. You mostly want to joke about the good old days, reminiscing about all the brightest hours and wildest memories of your journey on this earth before it eventually comes to an end, as all things do. I feel nothing but peace and acceptance at the thought of what awaits me at the end of my time. After all, when you're 60 in this world, you're considered to have lived a long and good life. On top of that, it is said that when you have been married for 40 years, you must have led a fulfilling life. By this standard, I should have no regrets. After all, Madeline and I had a wonderful, loving marriage for decades. We even had a child together who brought meaning and joy beyond all imagination into our life, despite the fact that she died in the plague a long time ago. Or maybe not even that long ago. I can't be certain. Unfortunately, the clearest memories I retain are of things that maybe happened in my teens and the first part of my adulthood, but the rest gets murky, including the time after Maribel's birth. I stretch my arms, sighing contentedly at the pull of my cramped muscles, and almost knocked over a cup above the table next to me. Oh, there's my cup of tea I have yet to finish. I picked it up delightedly and take another sip of tea, indulging in the memories that are rushing into my head. Drinking tea always reminds me of my father. He loved tea more than anyone I ever knew. Being born in rural Memoria in the corners of the empire where tea was aplenty and cheap did not help his tea-drinking habits. There was hardly ever a day, no matter how busy father was, where he would skip his usual evening routine of reading in his armchair, his trusty teacup in the other hand. Come to think of it, father was probably the biggest influence and reason behind my adoration for tea as an adult. I remember when I was a child, father would often take me to pluck tea leaves at our plantation. It was great fun. We would even turn it into a competition to see who could gather more leaves, and father would always let me win, which I didn't realize until I was older. At that time, I didn't understand why mother would always laugh and share a secret smile with father when I celebrated in triumph after every round of competition, but now I do. Regardless, those contests were some of the best childhood memories. Sometimes even Madeline joined in. She was our neighbor, coming from a poor farming family like us, but they led a much tougher life, barely making ends meet. We often played together as children, even though. I suddenly lose my train of thought. Fighting the fogginess in my brain, I try to resume my internal musings. Oh, that's right! Oh man, I skipped something. Hold on. Where is the text load auto? Ah, man, I don't know what I did. Perhaps this would discourage adults from coming too close, deterred by an ill sense of shame of our pride, but as children, we never let these things affect us. Madeline and I spent most of our free time together, making up games to entertain ourselves and getting each other in trouble. We were an almost inseparable pair of best friends. Eventually, as we grew up and started viewing each other as more than just an annoying friend who happened to live next door, love blossomed between us. After a period of courting, I proposed to her on a summer day in the very same fields where we first met. We got married in a small ceremony, nothing grand but still beautiful in its simple way. Afterwards, when faced with the choice of moving to a bigger town for a chance at better jobs or staying behind in Memoria, we decided on the latter to take care of our aging parents. In the end, it turned out to be the wiser decision. When our parents passed away, we inherited both their farms, and merging it together, which was more than enough to sustain our living and make up for the financial opportunities we missed out on by choosing to stay in Memoria. Compared to most rural folks, we had it easy. Mirabelle, our baby girl, was born in the wee hours of a new year. She was bright and beautiful with a bubbly laugh and always had a spring in her step. Yet, just as she had begun going to school and was aspiring to be a princess, tragedy struck. The cruel heavens brought a plague down upon the town, taking the lives of many. Mirabelle was one of the first to fall ill. It was a sickness that no physician could cure, and despite us even traveling far and inviting the best physicians, Mirabelle never recovered. Mirabelle passed away in our arms one night as we wept, shaking with devastation and disbelief. We buried her with her favorite toys and sang her favorite lullaby as our neighbors came to help bury the body. A great number of people in town dropped by to pay their respects and give their condolences. Everyone in Memoria had loved Mirabelle. There was a dark period after Mirabelle's passing where we seemed to drown in grief and could not surface. Our baby girl was gone. How could we live on? But life continued for us, and we did live on. Eventually, we learned to pick up the pieces. We then started to make regular donations to families who needed the money so that they could send their children to school or get out of debt. Of course, we have since retired and can no longer afford to do so, but for a while there, bringing joy to other families and their children kept us going. In the end, even when we thought we couldn't, we survived and got past Mirabelle's untimely death, but the wounds never fully healed. Madeline and I clung to each other even more, taking care of each other until the day we would be reunited with Mirabelle. We are always here. I will wait for you. We are family. I smile and finish my tea, setting it aside, overwhelmed by a sudden, unexplainable sense of exhaustion that I can't resist the urge to close my eyes. Madeline should be back soon from wherever she went, so I'll rest until she returns. I hope Madeline will not be angry with me for sleeping before dinner. I can't really explain why, but I just feel more like sleeping these days. My mother's last days flashed across my mind with startling clarity. She also liked to sit in the same chair that I am sitting in right now, just watching the fireplace crackle and burn until sleep would pull her under. One night, she went to sleep after saying goodnight to all of us and never woke up. She passed away peacefully in her sleep with a faint smile still on her face. My eyes are getting heavier now. Darkness envelops me and I welcome it. Oh, well. Transition. I force my eyes open groggily. A strange, inexplicable feeling washes over me. Is this a dream? I look down at my hands impulsively. Maybe it is just wishful thinking, but they look less wrinkled? I turn towards the window to check the weather and spot a figure in a distance. A very familiar laughter rings out clearly, filling me with a sense of warmth and happiness. The loud jingling of keys brings a smile to my face as I reach out to the figure in impatience. All of a sudden, the light around me dims drastically, causing me to yelp in surprise. Knock, knock. I jerk up into a sitting position, gasping. My eyes fly open at their own accord, darting around the room in confusion. Were they closed? I could have sworn I was just looking out the window a moment ago. Was that only my imagination? I rub the sleepiness away from my eyes and get to my feet unsteadily. This time, when I look out the window, the faint silhouette is gone. There's only a fiery sun hanging in a blue sky without a single dreary cloud for miles. I suppose I really was dreaming. However, I can't shake the feeling that something isn't right. I swept my gaze around the room. Is there something I'm missing? No, more like someone. Who? My attempts at recollection are interrupted by a rapid knocking at the door. I find a surprise. Is it a guest? I don't remember inviting anyone over. Maybe it's a business associate? Or maybe it's Madeline's father coming to return us the money? Dipping my hand into the water in the sink, I quickly try to smooth down the bits of my hair that are sticking out in wild directions to make myself seem more presentable before moving to open the door. Standing on the other side of the door is a young lady dressed in an elegant gown, looking like she's prepared for a formal and important occasion. She peers up at me expectantly with a friendly smile on her face the moment I open the door. Next to her, a little girl is clinging onto the hem of her dress with a doll that resembled a cow in her arms. I try to stifle a chuckle at her clothing. Is she wearing a tomato costume? How adorable! Excuse me, sir. May I ask if we have room for 2 guests to stay a little while? It seems like, unfortunately, we have gotten ourselves lost and in need of a place to catch some rest. Lost? That's hardly possible in Memoria. The town is too small to get lost in. Please, Mother and I just want to stay here for the night. I pause, a fleeting thought brushing across my mind. They look oddly familiar. Sorry, have we met? I wince when I hear the rudeness in my words, but perhaps I shouldn't have asked them. It's possible that I just ran into them once in town before, but with that child's tomato costume sticking out like a sore thumb, it seems unlikely that I would forget seeing them before. Madeline. Ah! No, I don't believe we have. My name is Madeline, and this is my daughter, Maribel. I'm sorry for inconveniencing you, but do you mind putting up with us for a night or two? I shake my head politely and step aside, gesturing for them to come in. Of course not. It's just my wife and I here, so we have plenty of room. Please, do come in. My wife. Right. Madeline is missing. Maybe she's at the market? After all, she was always being a morning person and wakes up as soon as the sun rises every day without fail. I quickly head to her room and peek inside. The dresser is left open and her usual clothes are gone. Yeah, maybe she's at the market then. It takes me a moment to realize that Madeline has followed me, hovering... Madeline? Madeline. Madeline and Madeline! Why do they have to name them so similarly? I understand that this is, like, not actually happening, because he's having a, remembrance back to harkening on his old memories of his child and his wife when she was younger, and they were all younger. Because of his, I'm assuming Alzheimer's. But, god damn it, this is gonna be confusing. Hovering behind me awkwardly, I meet her curious gaze and cough uncomfortably, wondering how to explain. Right, I have 2 guests now, I should be a good host. Would the 2 of you prefer to be in the same room? We have a child's room that's empty at the moment if you don't mind your daughter staying in there alone. I think both of us can stay in the child's room. Do you have a spare bedroll? I nod. In fact, we have 2 extra spare bedrolls left over from the time when Mirabelle was ill and we would stay with her in her room to watch over her at night. We do. Please give me a moment, I just need to find it. Where did Madeline put them? My head churns. I feel like I should know where the bedrolls are, but I can't quite pinpoint the thought. The shed? The barn? I found it! I snap back to the present right as Mirabelle... Maribel? As Maribel? She... as Mare! I'm just gonna call her Mare. I snap back to the present right as Mare rushes over, holding up a large bedroll triumphantly. When she moves over to hand it to Madeline, I notice the sunshine from the window glinting off the dust and specks of filth in the bedroll. I give an embarrassed cough, placing a hand on the bedroll. Ah, would you mind waiting for me to dust it off and hang it out in the sun for a while? I apologize for the delay. Madeline gives an easy smile and shrugs, putting the bedroll in my waiting arms. Not at all. Thank you for your thoughtfulness. You don't really have to go through all this trouble, though. No, you're my guest after all. Please make yourselves at home while I go clean up this bedroll. My wife should be home soon. I'm sure she will be thrilled to have guests. The young lady laughs and gives a playful wink. I'm sure she will indeed be thrilled. Adjusting the bedroll under my arms, I bend forward a little to pat, Mare on the head. By the way, thank you. You were a great help. Where did you find the bedroll? I found it underneath the bed. Ah, yes, I should have guessed. I still remember the times when I would drag the bedrolls from beneath the bed and spread them out onto the floor, while Madeline busied herself with comforting and convincing Maribel to eat some food between coughs. Sometimes we would switch and Madeline would work on her chores and the house while I cared for her. No matter what, both of us would always be nearby, ready to fly to Mirabel's side at the slightest twitch of her fingers. It pained us to see her suffering, yet we could do nothing but watch helplessly as her frame grew thinner and thinner with every passing day, listening to her coughs and wincing as we could feel the sting in our throats too. I had even hoped and prayed that I would be the one to go through the illness in her stead. After all, I was already an adult who had lived a good portion of my life while she had barely begun her own. She wanted to be a princess. She at least deserved a shot at it. I'm sorry. Are you okay? Suddenly aware of my eyes on me, of all the eyes on me, I nod and wipe the tear that formed against my wishes from the corner of my eyes. I try to focus on a reassuring smile, but it comes out more like a grimace. Mare gives me a doubtful look as though she can tell that I'm lying. Come to think of it, Mare resembles Mirabelle to a large extent, though she looks older and slightly more mature. Then again, how old or mature can you be when you're dressed in a tomato costume? I once again urge the guests to entertain themselves while waiting, and then slowly make my way out of the house. Ducking my head to avoid the harsh sunlight, I heave the bedroll over a clothing line and grab my carpet beater. Dust clouds float through the air while I pound the bedroll, causing me to cough a little. Madeline will have my head if she sees what I'm doing. She always glares at me disapprovingly whenever I irritate my throat with dust or smoke. Speaking of Madeline, she should be back soon, I suppose. I need to figure out how to best explain to her about the 2 guests sitting in our living room, though I'm sure it'll go over just fine, as Madeline has always loved entertaining guests. Perhaps she can even make these egg tarts that she always likes showing off for them. Truth be told, the tarts are a bit too salty for my taste, but hopefully the guests will like them more. Finishing my task with the bedroll, I turn to walk towards the barn to let Maybelle out so she can graze to her heart's content. I skid to a halt when I find the padlock there instead. My eyebrows pull together in confusion for a moment before my mind clears. Right! Maybelle is dead. Well, I guess that means my job out here is done. I head back into the house, stretching a little to get the strain out of my muscles. I feel marginally better, but my bones still ache. It seems like the bones in my body want to obey me less and less these days, to the point where merely using the carpet beater is enough to have me groaning in pain. Madeline turns around and greets me with a smile when I approach. I took the liberty of making us some tea for us. I hope you don't mind. Would you like some now? I grin widely and give her an enthusiastic nod. Of course! Like I would ever turn down tea. Thank you for the offer. If you get hungry, please feel free to eat anything you want. We have plenty of food, after all. Mare perks up at the words and looks up at me with an innocent, sweet smile. You have anything sweet? I ponder her question for a moment, trying to remember the contents in my pantry before nodding. I walk over to the kitchen and pull out a slice of bread. Feeling 2 sets of curious eyes on me, I try to speed up my work, smearing some butter on the bread before sprinkling sugar on it. I'm sorry it's not candy, but my daughter liked this kind of sweet bread. Have I told you about my daughter Mirabelle? She's at school right now. I'm sure you and Mirabelle would be great friends, Mare. Madeline nods approvingly as I hand the sugared bread to Mirabelle, who accepts it gratefully and takes an eager bite out of it immediately. Mare chews and beams at me, the look of pure contentment and pleasure on her young face taking me by surprise. I've missed this taste. Oh, you haven't eaten this kind of bread before? Mare freezes for a moment, looking like a deer in the headlights. I tilt my head at her sudden reaction, but Mare avoids my eyes, keeping her gaze downwards and eating in silence. Yes, she has eaten this before a long time ago. Yes, she's eaten this before a long time ago. There's a note of false cheerfulness in Madeline's voice. I study her curiously, and once again, the feeling of familiarity comes back. There's something about her that I just cannot put my finger on. It's your wife! From forever ago! She literally has the exact same headband and eyes. I can't remember ever talking to her before today, but every time I look at her, I get this kind of feeling that we've met a long time ago and even spent quality time together, which frankly is impossible. Or is it? Could she have been a friend from before? Curse this awful memory. I sigh, giving up the train of thought for a moment, trying to rack my brain before things that I can't recall make my head ache. Do you mind if I use the kitchen? I look at her with a humorous glint in my eyes. Haven't you done so already? Madeline shrugs playfully, laughing. This young lady reminds me of Madeline when she was younger, who was also extremely playful. Madeline would come up with all sorts of pranks and traps, which I would always fall for. One time, Madeline even tricked me into going into the woman's bath. I got into a lot of trouble with that village until she confessed that it was her fault. Do you remember, Madeline? That time when you tricked me into wandering into the women's baths? I laugh and silence falls over us. The smiles on the faces of both Mirabelle and Madeline widen as they give each other a meaningful look that I can't discern, and then turn to stare at me. How great that the 3 of us can be here together as a family. Dinner time is a lovely affair. We joke and talk about all kinds of things while enjoying the delicious meal of bacon and sausages that Madeline has so kindly prepared for us. However, the entire time I can't put one thing out of my mind. Madeline still has yet to return. When all of us have finished dinner, I get up to grab my coat and my oil lamp. Excuse me, I'll be going out for a while. I need to find my wife. She's been out since this morning and I'm getting very worried. It's probably nothing, but I still want to go search for her just in case. I step out of the door, but frantic footsteps behind me make me look back. Both Mirabelle and Madeline have followed me with an identical worried expression. What is it? Is it alright? I'm just going to... Oh, what is it? Is it alright? I'm just going to look for my wife. I'll be back as soon as I find her. Can I come with you? 2 extra pairs of eyes should help speed up your search for your wife. Me too. I want to go. I consider their offer for a moment. I briefly think about turning them down, but something in their eager expressions induces me to agree. I finally nod, smiling gratefully. Thank you. I appreciate it. Holding my oil lamp, I make my way down the path with the 2 guests behind me. My pace slows unconsciously as I try to decide where I should look first. Should I go to the market? Did Madeline head to the market early this morning? Lost in thought, I almost jump out of my skin when Madeline suddenly breaks the silence. Hey, can I ask you something? Yes? Are you worried about your wife? Of course I am, but I'm sure Madeline is fine. She always returns home to me safe and sound after all. One time she went to gather herbs for our daughter and never came back. I panicked like any husband would and set out to look for her. I found her in a tavern drinking. She had simply lost track of time and didn't realize it was so late when I showed up behind her, panting from the exertion of running all over town. Maybe I should go to Yigmund's tavern this time as well. Yigmund's tavern is closed. The owner passed away last winter. His son ended up selling the place and it's being rebuilt into another house. My footsteps faltered for a moment. I didn't recall that happening. That must be so. It did not occur to me to question it. My memory is bad after all. I'm sure it must be true. Sir, if I may, can I ask a question? Yes? What would you do if something happened to your wife? Maribel! Nothing happened to her, don't worry. Do you even know where to find her? I will just keep on walking until I do. I pat Mare's head until I look up, and she looks up at me with those big, innocent eyes. You'll understand when you get married. The rest of the journey passes in silence. I take my usual route to the town, keeping an eye out for Madeline the entire time. I pause hesitantly when I come into the crossroads with a new path that leads to the forest. This is certainly inconvenient. Madeline could have taken either path. Which way should I go? I think to myself for a moment before pointing at the forest. I think my adventurous wife would go this way. Madeline shakes her head, frowning, with Maribel laughing as if encouraging me to follow the path. The twists and turns of the path feel familiar. My feet seem to be taking me along a path without controlling. Maybe this is not totally new to me after all. It does kind of remind me of, yes, oh, I remember this place. Madeline's face brightens as she gives a cheerful smile. Madeline is at the end of this path, I'm sure of it. I try to increase the pace of my footsteps in haste, though I do not seem to feel the difference. The path seems to go on forever, and I try to curb my impatience by starting a conversation with my guests. We used to come here every day with our daughter. We like going to the wishing well. It's a steep climb, though, since the well is atop a cliff. Still, every day we would make our way up the cliff, rain or shine, to pray for our daughter's recovery. However, this time, I did not need to ascend the cliff before noticing the sight that awaits me. No! Madeline lies on the slope, her head twisted in an unnatural angle. Her clothes are caked in mud. Even from this distance, I can tell that there is no life remaining in her. There's a moment of dead silence where time seems to stop. My arms reach out towards my wife, trembling in disbelief. No! It can't be! I lunge towards her and already double back with sobs. Madeline holds me back with a surprising amount of strength while Mare clings to my foot, shaking slightly. No, what am I supposed to do without you now? Both of you have left me. You can't leave me like this. My legs give out and my knees collide against the ground, but the pain barely registers in my mind. I can't tear my eyes away from Madeline's body as I crawl towards it. Don't leave me alone. At least take me with you. Madeline! I cry incessantly in anguish and devastation as the two guests wrap their arms around me, offering whatever comfort they can. My wails echo through the quiet night, increasing in volume rather than fading, as though I hope to pass on all the things I never got the chance to tell her through the sheer volume of my voice, or wake myself from this horrible nightmare. I don't know how long I knelt there, cradling Madeline's broken body and weeping. Eventually, the two guests coaxed me to loosen my grip on her and heaved me to my feet. In a daze, I let them lead me home, where I collapsed in my armchair immediately. The sight of Madeline is burned into my mind, causing me to convulse in horror every so often. I want to scream and shout to the world about my pain, my helplessness, the anger I feel coursing through my body, but I've used up all of my energy crying.
Here, sir, drink this. You'll feel better.
I smile weakly and accept the cup of tea. I appreciate her concern, but this is something that tea cannot fix. The image of my wife's body flashes across my mind again, and I shudder with another great sob. I can't let my beloved life lie there, drenched in mud and rain, or even worse, possibly eaten by wild animals. We need to bury her. I must go back and bury her body at once. No, sir. Stay here. I'll go get some help from town and bury her beside your child. No, I cannot possibly trouble you. This is my duty as a husband to see to Madeline's burial.
It's no trouble at all.
Maribel, can you please be a good sir and here keep... Oh, what? Okay, hold on. Sentences, words. Mare, can you keep the good sir here company until I return?
Of course.
I will be back as soon as I can then. Madeline gives a small comforting smile and leaves. Her child sits in the armchair beside me, watching me cautiously as if unsure what to do. Don't worry, I won't do anything stupid. For some reason, my head is now clear. Madeline wouldn't want me to do anything stupid as well. She always told me that if anything happened to her, the first thing I must do is to celebrate everything she has ever done for me and live on for her sake. Thank you for putting up with me for all these years, Madeline. Thank you for... Tears pour out of my eyes as all the memories I shared with Madeline throughout my life start rushing through my head. My heart feels as if it's being ripped apart into a million pieces. So she died going up the steep cliff, or probably trying to go back down it. It sounds like she slipped and hit her head on the well, probably, because it was muddy and raining. So she, like, went up to the wishing well to probably wish for her husband's memory to get better. And in all of the rain and storm and stuff, she slipped and fell and hit her head and cracked her neck and probably killed herself. And that's why she was all bloody and caked in mud, which would make sense.
Hey!
The young girl hits me with her cow toy. Startled, I look at her blearily, still half blinded by tears.
Don't you think it would be more appropriate for you to say all these things with a smile at her funeral where she can hear you?
The young girl smiled brightly. I paused for a moment, wiping the tears away. She's right. Madeline has always hated it when I cried. Even during Maribel's funeral, she refused to shed tears in front of me. She was a much stronger person than I am. Which is wrong, by the way. It is not a strength to not cry. It actually takes strength to cry and to be willing to cry in front of others because it shows that you are an emotional being and that you are willing to be vulnerable. Especially at times of great sorrow, like having a loved one die. So I completely disagree with that mentality of, oh, you don't cry because you're strong, because that's just toxic. What will I do without her now? I almost sink back into despair, but push away the darkness with great efforts. You're right.
Aren't I?
That was how Maribel always replied when we told her that she was right. It brings a small smile to my face as I give her the same reply as I would have given to Maribel. You are. Calm for a moment, I take a sip of tea. I take a sip from the cup of tea. It tastes sweet. It seems a little before... I smile a little before giving a heavy sigh. Madeline, I can't believe she's really gone. The first thing to come to mind when I think about my wife is the day of our wedding. Our town was merely a quaint little village back then. The wedding ceremonies mainly consisted of a lot of partying and cheering, but my mother insisted that we at least follow the form that the big cities had. The village elder had just stamped his seal on our marriage document and declared us husband and wife when the villagers started chanting around us, urging for us to kiss. Laughing, half in embarrassment and half in amusement, we leaned in to kiss each other as the cheers erupted around us. When she pulled away, there was the stupidest smile on her face. I was sure I had the same dumb grin on mine, partly still in disbelief that I had finally married the woman of my dreams. She peeked at me through her eyelashes and whispered to me, "Finally." "Here you are."
Hey, are you really okay?
Maribel's voice brings me back to the present. I shake my head to clear the lingering memory from my mind and try to crack a smile, nodding in what I hope is a reassuring manner. "Yes, thank you for asking." I keep my eyes on the fireplace, not wanting to see the child's concerned expression. From the corner of my eye, I notice Maribel stifling a yawn. "If you're tired, go to sleep."
Then can you sing me a song?
I blink in surprise, caught off guard by the request. I can't really remember any good songs right now, but I suppose I have nothing better to do. This will be a good distraction for now. Of course I can. I set my tea aside and clear my throat, shifting my armchair closer to her. Maribel hugs her cow doll tightly to her chest and sighs happily as she curls up into a ball in the armchair. I reach over to stroke her hair as I sing. "I've just looked in to tell you, my dear. I've just looked in to tell you, my dear. There's 5 eggs in one nest in yonder hawthorn tree." I have no idea what song it is, but I'll say it in a singy way. Maribel seems to be the kind who can easily fall asleep. I could probably stop singing already, but just to be safe, I continue patting her head gently and crooning softly. "I'm teaching them to sing, you know, as yet one cannot sing. But the nightingale, I'm told, will have a lovely voice one day." I fall silent for a moment and stop my hand motions, but Maribel bumps her head against my hand a little bit.
Continue, please.
I smile, reassuring my actions. "I think I hear them calling me, and so I must not stay. I know you will not mind if I pay them a visit, for one day I know you will sing as well as them. I'll call you again one day and tell you something more. Good night, my love. The nightingale awaits to sing to you in your dreams." I look down to check, and as expected, Maribel has drifted off to sleep, all the while still clinging onto her cow doll. Good night, Maribel. I close my eyes as well, drowsy with exhaustion from all that has happened today. Also, did you guys notice that when he said good night, Maribel, it was the spelling of his daughter instead of her instead? I close my eyes as well, drowsy with exhaustion from all that has happened today. As sleep overtakes me, I keep repeating the same thought in my mind, hoping that by some miracle I will not forget it the next day. Remember to tend to Madeline's funeral and burial. I still can't quite believe it. For a brief moment when I woke up this morning, I thought it was all a dream and I would wake up to Madeline's sweet voice once more. The harsh reality hits me when some villagers knock on my door, giving me their condolences. It looks like my guest Madeline has gotten some able-bodied villagers to help me bury her, and as a result, the news has gotten around town already. Who was dropped by so far? I think my good friend Yigmund from the tavern did earlier, his usually cheerful face grim with sorrow. Morrison from the Crafters Guild had come by briefly as well, clapping me on the shoulder in a wordless gesture of comfort. Although none of this really took away from the ache of my loss, it helped slightly knowing that I'm not entirely alone in the morning. Somehow, the villagers even managed to find a good coffin on such short notice. Madeline always insisted that she wanted to be buried simply. However, I think she had always known that I would have insisted that she'd be buried in a manner that is at least what I considered proper. Thank you, Madeline. Thank you, Madeline. You are a guest in my house, yet right now you are doing all this work for me. Oh, this is fine, sir. Do not worry. A drop of water falls on my head, quickly followed by many more. I peer up at the cloudy sky. It seems as though even the heavens have agreed to join me in my sorrow. A sudden wave of anger towards the heavens for taking my wife away from me rushes through me, but I push that aside for the time being. I promised the young girl yesterday I need to talk to Madeline one last time. As they lower the coffin to the ground, I avert my eyes from the unbearable sight, preferring to look at the people who are all standing with me in solemn faces. I see Yigmund and his wife standing side by side, tears glinting in their eyes. I turn away in bitterness when I see him take her hand in his to console her. I catch sight of a few other familiar faces, and I make a mental note to thank them all later on their support. Do you want to say a few words to your wife before we let her return to the earth to rest? The young girl, Mare, holds my hand. Madeline follows her lead and reaches for my other hand. Comforted by their gestures, I find my voice and speak loudly. Madeline, thank you. Thank you. I try my best to smile, but more tears just keep flowing down my cheeks. I'm sorry you had to take care of this old, useless man for so long. Suddenly, memories of her feeding me that morning hit me with the force of a ton of bricks, and I start wailing. Why? Why did I spend all that time toying with those trinkets? The simple baubles that somehow makes perfect sense to me now, instead of talking to her. Why did I not kiss her before she left? I am so sorry. I just want to see you again. I cough, choking on my tears. Yigmund walks over to me and hands me a spade. one hand on my shoulder in a gesture of silent comfort. I nod in acknowledgement, and he wordlessly steps aside. There's so much that I still want to say. All the years that we have been married, all the moments we've spent together. I have decades worth of unsaid things that I want to tell you. How could you leave me behind like this? Why would you be there to greet me when my time is up? Can you even hear what I'm saying at all? Madeline encourages me to go forward. I think it's time. Your wife is waiting. She always is. I slowly dig the spade into the mud and toss the last bits of dirt to cover her coffin. When I'm done, I take a deep breath and stare at the freshly dug area where the coffin lies underneath. Thank you for all the help. I turn around, saying gruffly, but to my surprise, the only people around me are Madeline and Mirabelle. They said that they had other things to do, and that they'll meet you later. I see. I cough again, clearing my throat. My head is much clearer now. I can think of recent events more clearly now, even though some bits still stay murky to me. This reminds me of my father, who had an exceptionally clear head on the last few days of his life and had settled his affairs nicely and quickly. The entire time, he also kept looking out the door of our house as though he was waiting for someone. Let's go back now. Thank you, Mirabelle, Madeline. I say that unthinkingly and freeze. I look back at them and try to smile casually. I apologize for the slip of tongue. Let's go back. Let this old man make you some tea as thank you for all your help. The two of them smile simply in response and take my hands in theirs on each side as we begin to walk back to the home. How much longer are the two of you staying? I ask them as I set down 2 cups of tea and small plates of buttered sugar bread in front of them. We will leave soon. I'm sorry. Is our presence bothering you? I shake my head and smile. There's no way that an old man like me who has no company left will ever dislike having guests. Now that Madeline is gone, the house that was already lonely without Mirabelle feels even more silent. I was just thinking that maybe, just maybe, I don't have enough time left to keep being a good host to you. Want to hear a story? I never told Madeline this. Mirabelle nods, and her eyes burning with curiosity. Madeline tries but fails to hide her expression of shock as she also nods. My father was well, the tea plantation here is ours. He was a good man. He didn't let money go to his head and helped everyone he could. He fell ill one day and the physician came. Was he terminally ill? I nodded. They said it was something that could not be stopped and that he was just going to waste away and die, quite painfully at that. Madeline sighs, placing her hand on mine as comfort. I smile at her, silently thanking her for the kindness and respect. However, my father was quite the eccentric man. When the doctors gave the diagnosis, while my mother and I were shocked and subdued by grief, he merely asked how much time he had left, and then he went about his daily business like it was nothing. Madeline sighs and mutters something under her breath. Yeah, sounds like him. Yes? Oh, nothing. Please continue. He even insisted that we go about our daily business, even as his health and mental conditions got worse towards the end. However, in the last few days of his life, he was exceptionally clear in the head. He would never have believed he was a man on his last leg of life. You never would have believed that he was a man on his last leg of life. Especially in his earlier condition, it was a miracle that he was able to sort out all the complicated procedures and divide an entire estate for his wife and I, as well as donating the rest of his assets to charity. He even specifically lectured me to take care of my wife. I smile in nostalgia, sniffling a little bit as my nose turns sour. All these old memories are great and beautiful, even though at the time they felt devastating and painful, to the point where I didn't even want to relive those moments. He sounds like an amazing person. Oh, he is. I reach out to take a slice of buttered sugar bread as well, eating it slowly as I sip my tea. It feels good to be able to tell a story to someone who will listen, even if it is just 2 strangers that I know close to nothing about. I don't know how to explain this, but my mind has been getting worse lately, but right now I can talk to both of you without any problems. I can recall things that happened yesterday, even though I haven't been able to do so for a long time now. I may be thinking too much, but I think this old man has about lived out his life. Madeline shakes her head, a strange expression on her face. Then, are you scared of meeting your wife and daughter in heaven? Never. In fact, if anything, I would welcome meeting them.
But what if you still have a few years to live?
Then, live fully I shall, however I know best. I smile and continue drinking my tea. I have so much to tell them, especially Mirabelle. I think she would be married by now if she were still alive. Mare shifts in her seat.
How do you think she would have looked like?
Well, that's a tough question. Maybe she would have taken after her mother. Madeline was very ladylike when she was a teenager, but became more tomboyish after, probably because she helped with farm work after dating me. Or maybe that's just what I thought sometimes, because she was always more of a man than I am. I didn't think I would mind whatever she would have grown up to be like. She wanted to be a princess. Maybe she would have been one if she were still alive. I try to picture Mirabelle in a princess gown and shake my head in response to my own question. The image doesn't quite fit.
I think she may have been too tomboyish already.
You think so? The current conversation may not mean much to me, but it is extremely comforting and relieving for me to say all these things, perhaps even therapeutic. I suddenly feel as if a dark, murky cloud is trying to enter my mind again. I bite on my lip, closing my eyes and exhaling deeply, hoping that this simple action will drive the cloud away. However, it seems like my willpower at this age doesn't do much anymore. I'm suddenly very tired. I'm sorry. Old fool, go rest. I nod slowly, clambering onto my feet unsteadily and heading to my room. Madeline walks beside me as I reach my bed, holding my arms to support me. As I slowly get into bed, I sigh, looking up at the ceiling. There are days when walking seems harder and more tiring for me. This seems to be one of those days. And he also didn't notice that she said literally the exact same thing that his now dead wife said to her earlier. So, yeah, there's also that. I wonder if I'll remember her. Who? My wife. I think you won't have an issue with that. I can feel my mind going these days. I hear soft footsteps entering the room. I also wonder... Madeline sits at the edge of my bed and smiles at me softly. What are you thinking about now?
Yes, share it with us.
The young girl, still in her odd costume, climbs onto the bed. I can't help but smile and pat her head. I said that I had a daughter, right? I can't think well again. Please, at least let me say everything that I want to say before I forget it all. Madeline squeezes my hand, encouraging me to continue. I wonder if my daughter will be happy to see me. I swallow hard, trying to get a grip on myself. It seems that I'm getting more and more emotional these days. I'm sorry that I did not have a chance to do all the things that I promised her. Maribel looks up at me and beams cheerfully.
I'm sure she'll be happy to see you.
I smile, patting her head. I don't know about that, but thank you. I turn to my other guest, Madeline, and give a grateful smile. Thank you. I close my eyes, sighing happily. I've gotten what I wanted to say off of my chest. Is it okay? Darkness on my mind? You can come take me now. The strange feeling of something moist on my bed wakes me. Ooh, moist. In my half-asleep state, I don't understand what has happened until I'm hit by the repugnant stench emanating from the mattress as I sit up. I've soiled myself. Again. This is embarrassing. This will be especially embarrassing if my guests find out. I have to clean myself up before they wake. I almost call for Madeline's help when I remember that she wouldn't be there to clean up after me anymore. I shake away the pangs of misery. I need to focus. The guests will be getting up anytime soon. Quietly getting out of bed, I head to the wardrobe and retrieve a fresh pair of pants and some towels. First, I need to wash myself up. I nudge the door open slightly, praying that it doesn't creak. Pausing in front of the door to make sure the coast is clear, I carefully make my way out of the room. Sorry, did I wake you? Oh no. I stop dead in my tracks, almost jumping out of my skin when I suddenly hear Madeline's cheerful voice behind me. I slowly turn around to give what I hope is a normal smile. No, don't worry, I woke up by myself. Couldn't sleep? Do you want me to make some tea for you? Maybe that'll help you go back to sleep. I shake my head frantically, for once turning down tea in hopes of ending the conversation as soon as possible before she notices my situation. She gives me a strange look because of the urgent expression on my face, and her eyes land on my towels in my hand. Are you taking a bath? Isn't it rather late in the night for that? The young maiden smiles innocently. I fumble in my head for a plausible excuse but come up with nothing. Bowing my head in shame, I barely manage to whisper. I soiled myself. I keep my eyes on the ground, too ashamed to look at her reaction. Oh, I see. Well, don't worry, that is quite okay. Do you need help cleaning up? I know someone who kept doing that too, so I know what to do. She must be saying that out of kindness, bless her heart. It is most embarrassing being a man of my age. Oh, it's most embarrassing being a man of my age. No, I would say that it is exactly because you are a man of great age that you should not be embarrassed about this. I thank her kind attempt at making me feel better with a smile before monitoring the bathroom. I'm sorry for the stench. I will go and wash my clothes after taking a bath. Madeline laughs, her clear, beautiful laughter seemingly oddly familiar. Don't fret about it. If you want, I can wash your clothes for you. Just change out of them and give them to me. I frown. Is it, in a literal manner of speaking, a messy affair? It seems inappropriate to ask my guest to handle this for me. No, it's okay. I can handle it myself. Madeline urges me with a gentle smile. Let me help. I have had a lot of practice. It's also the least I can do to repay you for letting us stay here for this long. I hesitate, but eventually relent. Madeline seems to remind me to go take a bath and call for her when I'm done. I hurry to the bathroom to clean myself up and switch to fresh, clean clothes. When I shout to let her know that she can come back in, Madeline immediately returns and holds out her hands for my dirty clothes. Here you go. Thank you. I still feel terrible about asking you for help. Madeline shakes her head kindly. Like I said, I'm happy to help. I'll also take care of your mattress for you if you like. I can't possibly ask you to go through all that trouble. Let me. And while you wait for the new mattresses so you can go back to sleep, can you please go make sure that my daughter is still fast asleep? Of course. I am sorry again, Madeline. Of course. I will remember it. Yes, you will. She winks before leaving. I make my way over to the child's room where Mare is lying on the bed, snoring gently in her sleep. The toy she always has been rolled out of her hand, and I pick it up from the ground, staring at it and turning it over in my hand. What kind of person would make a plush toy for his daughter anyway? Why was it not a doll? And what was with this tomato costume? I sit down on the edge of the bed and smile at Maribel fondly. She looks even more innocent and sweet when she's asleep. If only my daughter is still around, she would have had great fun with you. The girl is smiling in a silly manner, an expression of pure bliss on her face as she dreams. I stroke her hair gently. I've already hung it out to dry. Madeline's soft voice makes me turn around. That was fast, thank you. My pleasure to help. She notices my hand on her daughter's head and gives a gentle smile. She is rather adorable, isn't she? Yes, she is. If my daughter were still alive, I sigh, unable to finish the sentence. I try to get to my feet, stumbling unsteadily. Madeline rushes forward to support me, but I wave her off. I can still walk, my dear. I was just trying to help you in case, sir. Sir? That sarcastic tone for the word is so familiar, but I can't put my finger on it. Go on ahead and get some rest, sir. Right, it's still the middle of the night. I should probably go back to my bed and rest more. Thank you again for all of your help. I can take care of it on my own from now on. I'll bring the clothing and mattress in tomorrow morning after I feed Mabel and maybe Madeline's breakfast. Father should be returning from his trip soon. Madeline sighs inexplicably. Right. Good night. Before I leave, I bend down a little and place the toy into Maribel's hands. Her grip immediately tightens around the toy. It seems like she is rather attached to her cow companion. I smile. The girl is adorable! Well, back to bed then. I mean, she's in a tomato costume. It's pretty damn adorable. Old fool, wake up! I wake up with a start, bolting upright on the bed and looking around. It's the farmhouse. I must have fallen asleep. What time is it? I need to go feed Mabel. Madeline hasn't scolded me if I fail to feed Mabel again and she has to do it for me. I quickly climb out of bed and rush out of my room. Maribel is sitting at the table and looks up at me with a warm smile when I enter. Madeline, standing at the sink with her back to me, turns around at the sound of my footsteps. Good morning, both of you. Good morning, Father. In one hand, she is clutching her favorite plush toy, a cow. Madeline, on the other hand, is cooking. Good morning, fool. As charming as always, I see. I sigh and already have one hand on the doorknob when I remember with a jolt. Right, Mabel has passed on. Ah, what a shame. The milk she gave us was great. Yes, a shame. Come, sit down and have breakfast. Bacon and sausages, perfect! How was school, Maribel? Maribel coughs a little, looking at Madeline, who was too busy making tea to notice. I pat her back gently in concern. It is good. We learnt lots recently. That is good. Study hard. Don't be like your mother who could barely get past school without me. Madeline shoots a look at me with a smile, then says something along the lines of, you will pay for that remark later. I gulp, averting my eyes and opting to focus on cutting my bacon instead. My eyesight must be worsening. It seems as if the sausage keeps rolling away from me, even though I'm sure that I've been aiming right. However, the sound of the knife and fork against the plate makes it evident that I have failed. Let me help, Father. She moves beside me and holds my hands, guiding them to the food. Thank you, Maribel, though I'm not so old yet as to need you to do that. Maribel smiles awkwardly and Madeline sighs loudly, drawing my attention. Old fool, drink your tea before it gets cold. I wonder if I truly am an old fool. Am I missing something? Or else why do you keep calling me that? Madeline smirks before looking at me. Madeline, excuse me, because right now they're assuming the roles of wife and daughter. Madeline smirks before looking at me and smiling. Nope, nothing at all. Shrugging, I chew softly on my bacon. Slowly on my bacon, also softly. Arrrr. Well, it tastes a little bit too salty today, but that suits me just fine. I'm already halfway through my bacon when I notice that Maribel and Madeline are just standing there drinking tea. Aren't you two going to eat? They shake their heads. You woke up late. We've already eaten. I nod slowly, accepting their explanation. I must have slept in. It must be a weekend today if Maribel is not at school, so I suppose a little more sleep than usual is justified. If it's a weekend, does that mean that we should head out as a family later? Should we go to the wishing well later? Father, I don't think I want to go so far. Come on, it'll be fun. Nope, not happening. Madeline refills my cup of tea as she speaks. Why not? I'm saddened by her refusal and I try to plead at her with my eyes. You're not at that age anymore where you can just climb up hills whenever you want to. I fall silent. Well, maybe you're right. However, we are the same age. I point at Madeline in triumph at her besting her in an argument, but something strikes me as odd. Open my mouth to try and point it out, but I can't quite verbalize my feelings. Something just feels wrong. What is it? Is her hair different today? What's wrong? Oi, Father, are you ignoring me? I turn to Maribel, trying to focus on her instead. No, of course not, Maribel. What is it? Can you tell me more stories like you did yesterday? Oh, of course. What do you want to hear? What did I even tell her yesterday? Tell me more stories about when you were young. When I was young, huh? I paused for a while, trying to think of some. Thankfully, the memories from back when I was just a child are quite clear in my head. You know, your father has a knack for picking out excellent tea leaves. Next to me, Madeline is adding another cube of sugar to her new cup of tea. I open my mouth to warn her that she's already added too much sugar, but then decide against it. She always liked things sweet anyway. So when your mother and I were younger, she always came over to play, and we had this small shed where we roasted the tea leaves. Maribel nods, listening to me intently, while Madeline's eyes narrow as though she is trying to recall what I'm about to say. I look down at my teacup. There's a solitary tea leaf swirling on the surface, and I study it for a moment in fascination. One time, we were playing hide-and-seek, and she decided to hide in the roasting hut. Madeline finally nods slowly, a look of enlightenment on her face as a long sigh escapes her lips. Fool. For me to remember but not you. That is some exceptional talent. I was not allowed to enter that place, so I never thought to look for her there. Then, when it took too long to find her, I had to go to find her parents too, admitting that I've lost her. Everyone was scared, thinking Madeline got kidnapped or got into an accident. But guess where she was? Sleeping in the huge pile of tea leaves like a baby. You know, the tea leaves are fragrant, and when you're young, you tend to sleep a lot. I don't. You don't. I have to think for a moment before answering something as simple as that. I must be getting old. I look at Madeline, something off about the word and about her in particular, but I am still not quite sure what it is yet. As I struggle to make sense of it, Madeline raises the teapot, silently asking me if I want to top up my cup of tea. I nod in gratitude, lowering my teacup so that she can pour some more tea for me. Maribel, on the other hand, is eating a sliced sugar and butter bread happily. She must have gotten it from the pantry without me noticing. She's nibbling on it like a rabbit slowly enjoying a carrot, and I smile in amusement. Oh, sugar used to be pretty expensive around here, so whenever we made these bread buns for you, they were a very special treat. Of course, things are different now that the Emperor Horus Memoria is in charge. The new emperor comes from the town Memoria, and thus has devoted a lot of time and efforts to revitalizing the sleepy town. Madeline shakes her head. It is now Emperor Julius Memoria. Horus passed away 6 years ago. Oh, I seem to be bringing up old things a lot then. I frown and tap the side of my head with a little wordless explanation. Madeline smiles understandingly. Why don't you tell Mirabelle about the day of our wedding? I scratch my head for a moment, trying to sort out the murky memories in my head, when a light bulb lights up above my head. A dim light bulb, but a light bulb nonetheless. Are you referring to the time when you panicked about the wedding? Maribel shoots Madeline a curious look, a look of one that clearly says, why haven't you told me this before, and why am I only hearing about this now? There was a tradition, you see, in our village on the wedding day that the bride would be hidden away by her family. The groom has to find the bride and bring her to the altar to complete the ceremony. I smiled, scratching my head again at the sudden blankness in my mind. What happened next? Oh, right! The memory comes back to me easily. So Madeline's family hid her in a really simple place, just behind the house, actually. Madeline shakes her head, already embarrassed about what is to come. Your mother was so worried that I couldn't find her, even though her parents had reassured her so many times. I actually went out to look for them, and we ended up going around in circles for hours just missing each other. She thought that I would be at the, I can't remember, the town's tavern. He thought I would hide there first instead of going for the most obvious location. I did? Madeline looks at me and gives a sigh before nodding. Yes, you did. I guess I did. I reply uncertainly, feeling suddenly uncomfortable. Why can't I remember anything? I bite my lips, my mind suddenly going blank. Father, are you alright? I blink a few times, trying to clear the haze from my mind, and smile at Mirabelle assuringly. I give her a gentle pat on the head. I'm okay. Aren't you hot in that costume, though? Mirabelle smiles and squeezes my hand, shaking her head. You made this for me, remember? There is such a genuinely happy smile on Mirabelle's face that my heart clenches for a second, warmth spreading across my chest. However, I once again struggle to recall this. Madeline, I'm sorry, but can you finish my story? I can't seem to... In annoyance, I smack my hand against my head. Madeline reaches out to hold my hand, stopping me. Hey. Madeline shifts her chair closer behind me. Everything is okay. I hesitate, smiling a little at her in reassurance. So, should I continue the story for you? Please do, Madeline. How about a story about the two of us giving you this costume later? I turn to smile at Mirabelle, pulling her into a hug. Of course, there isn't anything planned today. We can tell all the stories we want for today. How about you finish this story first, Madeline? Madeline's lips curve upwards. Of course I can, you old fool. You, being the old fool you are, went about the places I would obviously not be at. I mean, why would you go to the fishery to hide a bride? I suppose I am rather silly then. Our laughter echoes in the room. Moments like these, it's moments for these that I've lived and worked hard my entire life for with my family. I may one day forget everything, but I know in my heart that I will never lose the feelings I have for them. Then, we finally ran into one another, sweating and panting from all the trips around the village we made. Everyone was just laughing at us. It sounds like great fun. If only I could remember it. Madeline must be right. I must have been a silly oaf back then. I sincerely thought that I would have been something smart or whatnot. I bet my father said something cheeky. Indeed he did. He said that he would probably not be getting a child that day, seeing how tired we were. Your grandmother was positively furious at how silly your father was. She was always the stricter one. In fact, in a manner of speaking, you do resemble my mother, but father was always stricter to Mirabelle.
Yeah, grandfather was always strict. Grandmother always pampered me. And you know, it was actually grandmother who told you to make me this costume. Do you remember that, father?
I scratched my chin, a faint memory fluttering in the back of my mind. Wait, I think I remember. Was it the costume for the festival?
Yes, you remember.
It was really just a good guess, but she seemed so happy that I can remember that I didn't have the heart to tell her so. Madeline stands up and walks over to the pot to refill it before coming back to sit beside me. An earnest audience. Well, in our family, as long as there's someone listening, the story will always be told.
Mirabelle had everyone had a costume and I didn't. Grandmother then told you to make me one, but you didn't know what to make.
Then how did I
came in eating a tomato.
Did he seriously make a costume based off what you were eating? He told me that he had done it because he felt that it was unique and no one else would have something like that.
Well, Mother, I think he's right in saying that, but I'm sure he made it after he saw me eating it. There was an expression on his face.
Since when did Mirabelle start to speak in such a mature manner? I suppose it's good that she's matured. Still, part of me would like her to stay an innocent little girl who thinks that being part of the ruling imperial family is possible. Do you remember how it was when he realized that you made him a woolen sweater for winter? It was the same expression. It must be, this is it, I got this. It must have been, this is it, I got this expression. I smile sheepishly, even though I still don't remember what Mirabelle is describing.
This foolish man. Then, because I needed a prop, you made me this cow toy modeled after Maybelle, too.
She holds up the cow proudly and I smile. However, as happy as these memories and thoughts make me, for some reason they tire me out as well. I'm already yawning, even though I've only been up for at the most 3 hours. I try to hold back my yawn, but to no avail.
You should go rest, love.
I try to protest, but she gives me a stern look. Caving immediately, I nod in agreement. She helps me up and Mirabelle pushes over to grab my other hand to support me. As we begin to make our way back to the room, there's a loud knock on the door. Mirabelle looks at Madeline in silence. The two of them look at each other for a long time, then Madeline's head swivels toward the door. I should get that. I think it's just a traveling peddler, dear. Go rest, I'll handle it. That's fine, Madeline, I can handle something like this. I walk over to the door and open it. Outside of stands an old man. He looks familiar. Extremely familiar. Oh! Reynard, Reynard. It's been a while since I last saw you. We were getting worried, so I came to check up on you. You should at least come to Anne's new restaurant. All of us have been waiting for some time to sit down and have a good meal with you again. What about Parfait Fridays? Parfait Fridays. Wait. I know what this man just said should mean something to me. My brow pulls together as I concentrate. It takes my brain a few moments to process his words, but it finally comes to me. You are Deputy Mayor Henderson. The man in front of me is the second in command in Memoria and a good friend as well. Where is Madeline? Where is Madeline? My, I'm no longer the farmer I used to be. Just walking here makes my back ache. He enters the house. I turn around to see Madeline and Mirabelle holding one another, looking visibly nervous. I shake my head in confusion. Why is he asking where Madeline is? She's right here. You don't see Madeline? My old friend gives me a strange look, as though I've gone senile. My, she doesn't seem to be here either. Where did she go, Reynard? I gulp and turn to stare at Madeline and Mirabelle, who are hanging their heads in shame. Somehow, all of a sudden, everything seems bright and clear to me now. It's as though the events of the past few days is speeding through my mind, and for a brief moment, countless numbers of emotions swell up within me. Happiness at the obvious thing that is happening. How can I be so foolish as to not even notice this? Sadness at my wife's passing. However, I throw my head back and give a joyous laugh, smiling and nodding at Madeline and Mirabelle before turning back to Henderson. It's nothing. Let me make you some tea for coming all the way over here. Madeline said she had a trip to make, but she will be back. Ah, thank you. That would be much appreciated. I sit down with Henderson and talk with him for a while. It doesn't take long to convince him that Madeline is currently on a long trip in the neighboring town. He sits in the chair where Madeline was sitting just a moment ago, finishing the tea and eating the sugared butter bread that Mirabelle was eating earlier. The chair has indeed moved. I am not insane. They are really here with me. Henderson tells me about how he has sold part of his land to a couple from the country, a retired healer and a merchant, but I'm barely listening. He also tells me about how adorable they are and how they remind me of Madeline and I. He eventually gets up to leave after the second cup of tea, perhaps sensing that I'm not in the mood for aimless chatting. Before he leaves, I bow my head in farewell, causing him to look at me in surprise at the formal gesture before returning it. When I turn around after closing the door, I see Madeline and Mirabelle standing in front of me.
Sorry, Father. We didn't mean to.
It was my brilliant idea. Please. I raise my hand to stop them from speaking any further. I want to cry, but I cannot find the energy for it. For once in a long time, my mind is clear, as though a ray of light is passing through the clouds, gathering in my head and disappearing them for the time being. I sweep Madeline up in a tight hug. Can you two, who have walked through the gates of heaven, tell me something then?
What is it?
There are tears in Madeline's eyes as Mirabelle clings to my clothes, sniffing. From what I have observed and learned from my parents' final days, I assumed that my time to take the final step through the heavenly gates is just around the corner. So, can you tell me?
Mirabelle will tell anything she can, Father.
I get down on one knee, embracing her before releasing her and looking into her eyes. Then, tell me, will I find the two of you beyond the gates in heaven? Mirabelle's face finally crumbles. She starts sniffling before breaking into tears and sobbing and nodding wildly.
Yes, we will be there.
Madeline kneels down beside us and Madeline kneels down beside us and wraps her arms around the both of us. I soak in her warmth, treasuring the feeling of her embrace that I once thought I'd never feel again. It is not just us waiting for you, you know. Mother, father, and your parents are there too. I see. Instead of feeling sad at the impending end, I break into a smile. It's the widest smile that I have been given for a long time. I see. It looks like this old man has nothing to worry about at all. Now, do you think I can go rest? Madeline tugs Mirabelle away from me gently, and I let go reluctantly. There's a moment of silence as we look at one another. I take the opportunity to drink in their faces, trying to take in every detail and commit them to memory. Mirabelle gives me a soft smile, one that is clearly wise beyond her years, and I choke back a sob at the thought of having to leave my daughter once again after just barely being reunited with her. I comfort myself with the fact that I will see them again soon, and I will be with the family once more. Will be? There's a gradual glow of white around them, waiting for you. A blinding light emanates from them, and I have to squeeze my eyes shut, turning away. When I look back at the spot where they just stood a moment ago, they are no longer there. Thankfully, they did not take my clear mindlessness with them. I remembered precisely what I was planning to do. Before Henderson interrupted us, I was going to take a nap. I move over to my armchair that is kept cozy and warm by the fire that Madeline had lit earlier. I lean against the cushions and sigh in contentment. The crackling of the fireplace is all that there is left in my ears. Soon, even that sound fades. Darkness and silence surrounds me, but I feel no fear. Only a mild sense of anticipation and a rush of relief. I peer into the darkness waiting. Eventually my eyes can make out a figure in the distance. No, two figures. They're beckoning to me, and I break into a sprint, more agile and energetic than I have ever been in years.
Dad, what are you waiting for? You're no longer old, but you're still a fool. Wait for me!
I chase after them, laughing. For a long time, all three of us laugh. Aww. And that was it. That is Forgotten But Not Lost. So that was very, very sweet. I thought that was a very cute visual novel. Looking at the really hard last final moments of a person's life who obviously has Alzheimer's and memory difficulties, and what it must look like for them trying to hang on to a lot of memories about their life, about their family, about their loved ones, especially in their final moments, when everything just seems to be going all over the place. I obviously knew that the child and the woman that showed up were his wife and his daughter. The fact that they only showed up after his wife had already left the house and then was dead was pretty obvious. And obviously the names were extremely obvious as well. It was a really, really good story, and I thought that it was very sweet. It was short, it was simple, it said what it wanted to, and it had a really beautiful ending where they all got to meet together in the gates of heaven in this one, in their afterlife. So I love that, and I thought it was very cute. If you guys enjoyed this as well, make sure that you go ahead and click the like button if you have not already, because it tastes delicious and it helps the channel immensely. Same with the subscribe. It's free to do so and it helps our channel out a lot. I appreciate you guys being here and enjoying the visual novel with me. If you have a specific visual novel you want me to do next, let me know, because I love doing these. But without taking up any more of y'all's time, I'll go ahead and let you beautiful people go. Goodbye, my lovelies.